We don't give financial advice on this channel. Investment decisions are yours and yours alone. There are plenty of people who've become millionaires, some of them by shorting the stock. Well, Michael Burry started as a billionaire and to become a millionaire, but he did a fantastic job. He lost his hedge fund. Now he's selling courses for $396 a year. Buddy, I already know how to turn a mountain of cash into a molehill. I don't need your help. But who I do need help from is my buddy Herbert from Brighter. We're going to be talking about the price to earnings ratio. Is it too high? How much too high is it? Talk me down from the ledge. We're going to go through some of the different segments of the company and discuss whether these prices are too darn high. I'm Brian. Welcome to Futuraza. Herbert, thank you for joining me in this session. I need support. As many viewers know, you are my emotional support, Herbert. I need that, and I appreciate it. You've heard the claim, PE ratio is too high. I don't know what it is today, 200. I've seen it as high as like 260 maybe. It's very high. If this was an IBM or a Coca-Cola or a Costco, you'd say that's way too high. I do not see. Costco is still growing. It's not growing like that. That's pricing in too much. Is Tesla pricing in too much?
Well, the way I'm going to answer this is because I've interviewed several people who are financial analysts, who have retail analysts, who have given me different opinions of how they think about the PE ratio. And I think that that's the best way to kind of walk us through. But on a personal note, I remember in, I don't know what year it was, before the 2000s, and I was very interested in Amazon, realizing that Amazon.bomb, Amazon's such a great company. We know that their strategy is very much take all their profits and just don't get earnings and just pile it back into R&D, because their big play is one day e-commerce is going to be so big and we're going to be a big player in this and we're just going to keep investing in this for the future. And I remember thinking, my God, the PE ratio was 75 at that time. And I was taught, as all of us, that PE ratio should be around 15. This is 15 years to pay off the earnings for 1 year. 75 years? Whoa. That's expensive. And I did invest in Amazon, but I didn't go big, because that spooked me a little bit. So that was my first kind of like early, when I was trying to figure this out, how this works. Now what I learned, and you talk to people like Søren Basher, he'll say that, okay, PE ratios is a typical metric that almost every analyst out there points to, and they use it. But it's flawed in many ways. If you look at most analysts, what they'll do is they'll look at the PE ratio, and what is the PE ratio on those screens when you look at Yahoo, Google Finance? Those are 12 months trailing. So they took the 12 months trailing and then tell you what the price of the stock versus divided by the earnings of the 12 months of trailing. And that is a number that they're comparing others. And then they try to compare it to, which is wrong. What they should be doing is, you should look at, if you want to look at PE ratio, make sure that at least it's 1 year forward, or better yet, 3 years forward, or better yet, 5 years and onward forward. And then secondly, when you compare companies to each other, and you're going, hey, auto companies, they're 10 or 15, but Tesla is at 200. That's ridiculous. That's overpriced. Well, okay, but is Tesla an auto company or not? That's the whole debate. So that's the key point. AJ, I just interviewed him recently, and so Søren Basher, retail analyst, will say this: if what he does is he doesn't look at the P ratio so much as he does with future cash flows. If you're a retail investor, you're not like the analyst. You're not trying to show your performance within 12 months. And by the way, they're not measured by performance anyways.
No.
But they are really just care about the short term. You as a retail investor have this ability to look up the future. And because it's a startup, the Tesla, you see it as a 12 startups in one, and not just a established auto business, then you should look at the forward cash flows of these startups. The two biggest one being, there's energy, and then there's obviously autonomous, and then there's robots. Now you look up 5 years forward and take those future, and you can apply some sort of like, I don't think it's going to be 100% likely it's going to happen. You can move the numbers. You can be very, very conservative. Take those, do your numbers, try to figure out how much earnings, cash flow that this car company will get in 5 years, and then you apply all these conservative numbers to it, and you might even say, I think there's only a 10% chance that Tesla will actually even succeed in robots, or a 10% chance that autonomous. You take that future cash flow and you bring it back, and guess what? You'll find out that the price, present day pricing, is a lot higher than what it is today. So that's what Stern will do. Sum of the parts, which is you take all the businesses, each business, you go and look at future cash flows, you bring it back to what you think the current price should be at this point. And if it's lower than that, it may be a value purchase today, if you're willing to wait to the future.
That's one luxury that us retail investors have, is we all know what our investment horizon is, where a lot of these companies are only looking at 3 months or 3 years or some very specific time frame. The reason I need you viewers to actually take this seriously, don't listen to me, don't listen to CERN, don't listen to Herbert, and definitely don't listen to the guy at the bank. All of us are doing the research for ourselves, and you need to do the research for yourself. The reason I love CERN, the reason I love you and my own work, of course, is because we show you the math. There are so many moving pieces that you might look at my assumptions and go, ooh, that one's too high or too low.
Change it. Mm-hmm.
Change it. You change it for you, and then determine if it makes sense. That's been my strategy.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you that that's the best strategy, because there's also luck involved, and there's also force majeure, things beyond our scope of premonition, things that are not on the horizon that can change it all. Let's take one segment, energy. How bright?
Sorry,
Yes.
Before we go there, though, Brian, let me complete the
Yes,
thought
please.
here. So that was Stern. He looks at some of the parts, all the businesses, and then he forwards the cash flow and brings it back. I interviewed AJ, a great analyst. He does deep dive research. He came from Goldman Sachs, and he does his modeling, but really, really, really specific. What he said was, okay, PE ratios are not the devil. They actually have a role, but he did explain that you do need to look at forward PE ratios, and he will look at 3 years forward PE ratios, right? So that's very similar now at this point to, cash flow, discounted cash flow. But he says that the thing about PE ratios is you want to look at the past performance, and you see the range, the corridor, he calls it, of where the PE ratio has been for that particular company in the past. And what he discovered with Tesla, for example, is that for years, 5 years plus or whatever, I can't remember the exact number, the PEs has been 99, like 100. Okay? So just off the bat, this company has already been seen as an innovation company. And so the market has said that this is not a 15 P ratio. The future is bright for Tesla. And then when you look the last year, the P ratio has been 200, right? And again, at some point, if the market's telling you that a P ratio is around 200, that tells you something, right? The market kind of looks at this, is already building in future cash flows in now. That's why price is high, stock is higher. Now, and then he says that there's a corridor. So if you look at the volatility of the stock, he showed it on his graphs in one of my interviews with them. You'll see that there's a corridor of how high sometimes the PE ratio could get compared to where the future earnings are for Tesla. And the corridor, there's high and low, right? And so sometimes it does reach the high. And that gives you a sense that, okay, well, we're actually kind of at the high of the price of the PE ratio could be high for this particular stock, this company, Tesla today. Even for Tesla, which is already high PEs, it's kind of high now. And he says that gives you a little bit more, insights of what's the likelihood, the probability that it can keep going up, which can happen, or it can maybe just settle back into the median PE ratio where it is today and what we're expecting in several years. So he says, still value in looking at PE ratios, but you have to do much more nuance than just, hey, this one number looks high. Can't just say that.
All makes sense to me. When we're looking at stock math, I'm going to share this one. It took me a second to find it, but I've got it now. It is buddy of mine on X. I haven't seen him in a bit. I hope he's doing well. He would put up his own lines of Gort. And the question marks indicate that he has no idea what's going on. He just drew some lines. And they're as good as anybody else's lines, and they don't mean anything. And he would try and be cryptic and say, "Get you can guess what they mean," and people would guess, and you go, "Yeah, maybe I don't know." So
Yeah.
that was just kind of fun. Uh, let's talk about energy. How bright of a bright spot is energy?
I mean, okay. So first of all, what is it today? Energy is now 10%, maybe I think 12% of the yearly revenue, the run rate of Tesla's annual revenue. So does that
But
tell
not
you right there?
10% of the profit.
Revenue. Oh yeah, it's 30+% margin, so even higher in terms
Yes.
of percentage margin. But in terms of run rate for revenue, 10% sales, 12% I think is actually it's already past 10%. So and that is with Lathrop at full at scale, and China and Shanghai just getting up to scale. So if you think of it that way, first of all, it means it's significant. It's no longer this we're just a car company. I think at this point you have to say we're a car and energy company. Now, what's the future? I had this one guy post a comment, and he said, "You guys are so bullish. You're ridiculously bullish. Why? Because you're estimating that energy is going to double and triple in the next several years. How ridiculous is that? If you had said 15% growth each year, I'd believe you." And then you obviously sit there and going, whoa, you don't know. I guess he didn't. Of course he didn't.
Of course
That,
not.
well, the reason it's going to double and triples because they're doubling and tripling their manufacturing capacity. So they have Lathrop full. They've got Shanghai almost built and ready to go full. Then they've announced and they've already got, building the Houston one. And so, yeah, just that alone, it's going to be 3 times larger than what they've been doing with Lathrop. So where are we headed with this is that, you got 10 billion will become 30 billion, which is 30%, that assuming that auto doesn't continue to grow. But the estimates that I've seen, some people have put numbers to, they think that the energy business, including CERN, has said this energy business is going to be as large as Tesla's business today, $100 billion worth in like 3 to 5 years.
So that is, if it becomes as big as automotive, that means, and substantially more profitable, 50%,
Right.
100% more profitable. That right there chews through that PE quite a bit. That brings it down substantially on in terms of today's value. Uh, it would help because the earnings would increase by that much. Uh, what about the next one on the horizon? Not robotaxi, but FSD revenue.
Yeah, that's one. It's an interesting one because FSD, many of these analysts have been saying, yes, robotaxis here. Yes, finally, right? They're finally saying this. But my price target is still going to be at $400, 410, which is what the price is today.
Oh,
And then why?
it's 410 today. My price target, I just revised it, 412.
412, exactly.
Come on.
And why? Why do they do that? Because they'll say yes, but it's going to be lots of competition. They're going to be just one of them. Okay, fine. But though they will now start modeling out FSD now because FSD is a real product, a real line item. They can see the sell. And for years, they've been saying, well, 10% uptake, that's what it is. So it's there, but it's not meaningful attribution. Now you're hearing more and more analysts saying, yes, FSD is going to be a big, significant jump for revenue. And I think that for me, I've always said this, which is if FSD works, and you and I know it does, but let's say if it does work, are you just going to get 10%? Are you just going to get 20% of cars taking it? Or more likely, it's going to be 80%. It's either 10% or 80%. Not like this kind of in the middle, incremental. If it really works, 80% of people will subscribe to $100 a month, and they will, if you can text and drive, those kind of things. So I think at this point, FSD attribution should be there. The question is how much. Now, if it's $8,000 per car sold, that is doubling the margin of which is what they make now, $7,000 per car, $7,500 per car. You can double it, just that alone. So basically, you can think of it as if you've doubled the production capacity of your cars, 2 times bigger of a car company than you are last year.
Yeah. Well, and if you're shipping, let's say, 1,000,000 cars with just the subscription option, that's $100 million a month in additional revenue. It's
Pure
over
revenue, pure
$1 billion a
margin.
year. Pure. The marginal cost is, I suspect, zero.
Zero.
They already have the data connection to the car that's already paid for. They just have to flip a switch.
Yeah.
So it is zero. So, and that's again $1 billion a year extra, but $1 billion doesn't sound like all that much until you realize, right, but it's 1 million cars every year. And it's 1 million cars going back some number of years. So all of that. But I would say that of the things we're discussing, maybe that is the least exciting, because the next one is, of course, robotaxi. And we can't go into too much depth because we have both gone into what I would call extreme depth on this one. We have done Titanic level deep dives, but just give us an overview on your thoughts of what robotaxi could do to the revenue outlook moving forward.
So let's say if the price of the stock today is $400, because you're referring to PE ratios, the stock is $400 today. I think most people are saying to you that $200 of that is attached to the auto business. $100 of that is attached to the energy business. So you got already 100, 150 attached to a future autonomous, and most analysts have still not added any dollar amount to the stock price for robots, even though they're saying that it's there, they've done the research, they haven't quite yet decided it's a real business yet. So about 100. But if you now again 5 years out, future, how many cars, how many states, what is the actual dollar per, the price that they're selling? You map that out, and Sternbasher has done a fantastic job showing you all sorts of spreadsheets, what he takes into consideration, margins and all that. And then you can, again, decide it's a 10% likely it's going to happen, or another way to look at it is 10% of the market share that's going to happen. Basically the size of an Uber. But at some point, it actually goes way beyond ride hail. And that's the argument that Kathy Wood and has been saying with ARK Invest, is that I think the number is like 800 billion if you are a ride hail. You're just competing with Uber and Lyft. But it's like 2 trillion if you start realizing that this is not just ride hail, but it can replace lots of different kind of transportation. And then once you get to under dollar or 30 cents a mile, 50 cents a mile, those kind of things, you're now replacing all transportation.
Cargo, everything, mass transit.
Everything. People won't be buying cars anymore. They'll instead be just using yours. And so at that point, you're talking about a $10 trillion market. So it can be 10 times bigger than what you think it is, or just, $1 trillion market. So depending on how you view this and how long your time frame is. But let's just stay with the autonomy, which is ride hail only. Again, the pure margins, where we're going, cars, if Tesla uses a car for robotaxi, I think a conservative number is $30,000 of revenue per year per car.
$100, less than $100 a day. I think that is reasonable.
So if you're getting $30,000 per car per year, instead of what I just said earlier, you're making $7,500 per car if you sold it
per car once,
$30,000 per year. Just now you're talking of 5 times car company today, the auto company today. Now, of course, they're going to mass produce the Cybercabs. They're going to produce not just 2 million cars now. They're going to produce 4 million, 5 million, 6 million of these autonomous cars. And then you go and say, well, wait, if you can make 30,000 per car, why would they sell it to you and just make a 7,500? What they will do instead is lower the lease pricing to extent that you will buy it as a lease at an incredible monthly price, just crazy. It'll blow every car out there. You wouldn't want to buy another car. Then once your lease is over, Tesla takes it over 3 years later, and then uses that for continued 30,000 per year pricing. I think that's the model they might move to, and then eventually they'll move to an all-in subscription model where you just subscribe per month, and instead of just getting one car, you can choose. Oh, this weekend I'm moving. I need to get a Cybertruck. Oh, this weekend I'm going to a big event. I want to have the Roadster, or I want the Model S. I want the really cool looking car. I want a 4-seater, so I've got family members coming. I want the Model X this week. You can basically pick and choose which car you have. You subscribe to it all in one payment, including with much lower insurance, because it's safer if you're being driven by FSD than not. So this is, it's more than just, like, it depends. There's FSD licensing, which, by the way, I don't think CERN and I have agreed that at some today you are adding in, oh, how many people will buy FSD? I think that that's going to be like temporary. Eventually, it's either going to be robotaxi usage instead of you paying an FSD license. It's just part of how much revenue you're going to get in robotaxi, or it's part of yeah. It's not even part of you don't they'll make it for free. Like you're just making it's like a cut of robotaxi is what it is. It's not a line item
So there's
anymore.
a couple things I would add in there for context. One reason I think they would sell me a robotaxi is because I live in a market that I don't imagine they wish to serve, maybe ever. The market's that small that it wouldn't make sense financially to set up a cleaning depot. Just let people like me, and my car wouldn't get much utilization here.
Yeah.
Maybe a few
But
rides
I
a
think it's
day.
going to be a lease model instead of
Right.
a sales situation
Well, you're
anymore.
you're saying instead of buying the car, you would please subscribe, is what I hear you saying, guys. It's costs you nothing and it helps
It's
the
a
channel.
subscription model.
It's a
Check it out by
subscription model,
subscribing to Brian first,
and
and
I
you'll
love
see
it
what is.
because
It's
some
free.
people complain. They complain. They go, "Oh my gosh, why do you bug me?" Hey, man, you're not paying. Ah, and some of them do pay. So thank you for that as well. I would say the one last thing I wanted to mention, just for context, before anyone out there gets too excited and thinks that we are escaped insane asylum patients, which at least one of us is not. You can determine which, but I think you know. Uh, is that as those cost per mile keeps coming down and down and down, the margins get compressed. If the rides are being sold at a penny a mile markup, it's hard to justify huge valuations because despite having every mile in the world driven on it, it wouldn't be enough dollars. But there is a sweet spot, and I have confidence that the data engineers at Tesla are good at figuring out where that is for maximum impact, greatest good, all that. And it may
That's a good
vary
point.
substantially by market. You'll see some markets where video games cost quite a bit less or quite a bit more because that's just what the local environment is. Guys, in the comments, what do we miss? What do we misunderstand? Leave it. I beg of you. Happy Thanksgiving. Everybody else, stay tuned, stay juicy, and I cannot wait to hear from you, clever robots, on the flippity flop.